What's up, everybody? This is Ripples in Wales, back for another video. I hope you're all doing well and having a great day wherever you are in the world and whatever you're doing. Sunday 5th of July at 12 PM local time here. Welcome back to the show. It's been a week. I'm going to have a quick catch up on news events today. Happy one day late, belated happy 4th of July to all my American listeners from yesterday. This is coming in recorded the day after your annual celebrations, but your celebrations this year have a different feel to it because they're the quintennial century, I don't even pronounce it, 250-year celebration of your Declaration of Independence, which is a very, very important text. We're going to look at some of that in a minute, and the connections to my part of the world and that text. So we had a lot of American ancestry, Welsh ancestry in America in the early years of the, I guess you'd call it the founding people in your country. Some of the great minds, well, most of the great minds came from British waters, from the Plymouth Sound back in the day. The Mayflower, the famous ship, sailed over to Maine, I believe it was, with pilgrims. Very interesting story. Anyway, let's get into the news. If you haven't been before, I'm Ripples and Wales. You'll find me on X here. And all the links for both the YouTube channel and the Rumble are always in the description. Okay, first things first, let's have a look at the charts. Now, why do I like to look at these charts? So I kind of knew yesterday was going to be a pump and dump by the market makers. Now, I've said before in some of these videos that I believe what will happen is that the market makers will play every one of these pumps to a tune over the next few months as we're waiting for regulations. What do I mean by that? People get excited when any big news story comes out. 4th of July, everyone gets jubilant, buys a lot of crypto. We're at the bottom. The market makers take advantage of that, running up a little bit higher than it's going to be going, and then kind of just start selling off on the top, like we see here, and here on the charts. They're going to do a lot more of this, and this is just trading on their world. They'll run it up and buy $1 billion worth for $1, run it up to $1.20. They make 20% on $1 billion. That's 200 mil. It's like that's a big win for them. So they trade on massive trends, but don't get caught out by this trading velocity. I mean, it's amazing to accumulate in these regions. We're going to look at a post a little bit later. I think we're going to come back down, certainly down to the dollar mark again, and then we're going to start winding ourselves into a little bit of the lower areas and start the Wyckoff distribution before the spring. Blockchain Back is probably the best ones to watch at the minute. Worth having a look at his channel and CoinsKid as well. They're both very good TA people. We're not quite there yet. I think Bitcoin's going to probably go to 48. I could be wrong. I just think you see we're a little bit early on that. I think we're coming straight back down to this kind of lower range here, 53s, maybe wick down as low as 50s. I don't think we're done. There's a bit more in the tank to go down yet before we plateau out and then turn things around. I was looking on Polymarket yesterday. I've seen a post. Bollocks! This has gone frozen on me. I was looking at Polymarket yesterday. There's a guy called Jay Nesbitt in the community who's playing one hell of a trade at the minute with a little bit of leverage of XRP. Would not recommend it, but he pointed out that he's got some bets running with XRP on Polymarket, and there was a few kind of bets that you can search at, but one of them in particular was, what price will XRP hit in 2026? And there's a load of bets that you can put on, and the largest aggregation of kind of bids was, where was it? 17k on that. That's like what was it? Some people are betting what? 20 cents? Freaking madness. Okay. So 70% of the bids are putting it around $1 by the end of the year. And so there's a lot of concentration of that. It's bet by 20%, but you can put a bet on. And so if I say that by the end of the year, do I think it'll get to all-time highs, which would be like 360? I could put a bet on here, and $100 on, say, buy yes on that. And so if I put $100 on that, I'm not condoning this. It's just quite interesting. That would be a 3x on that. It's interesting. I might take a couple of punts on this. As a bit of a giggle. I don't know if it will go to all-time highs by the end of the year. I think it probably should, but we just don't know them in the markets. Anyway, let's have a look at some of the America 250 celebrations. This is the Red Arrows, the British fleet of special aircraft that we have. Now, those red arrows, they often come to our island. Can't give too much away on that, but yeah, we've met a few of those guys, and they often arrive here and do as touch and goes here, and then head off to other parts of the country. But we see them here most of the year in and out. So it's so cool to see them back over in America, doing your Independence Day. What else is going on? Some crazy guys on motorbikes firing rockets whilst doing a wheelie, like fucking wild. I didn't quite get my head around this until I saw what was going on. Fair play, like you guys know how to celebrate, so that was super cool to see. Guy's probably doing about like 70k on a motorbike, pulling a wheelie, firing rockets off the front of it. Okay, there's levels to this game. That guy's wild. All right, and you know this is supposed to play. Stay happy. America 252 on the 4th of July from Wales. Did you all know 17 of your presidents had Welsh ancestry, including Lincoln, Jefferson, Adams, and Nixon? And a lot of those, founding fathers of your country came from very, very powerful, strong British and including Welsh political backgrounds, and a lot, the true brilliant thinkers of the time contributed to the Declaration of Independence, which was a very powerful text that it runs the lifeblood of your country, which similar to the Magna Carta that Britain had in the 10th century here, which is a little bit different, but similar kind of powerful text. Moving on, this is Crypto Insight UK. I'm going to look at his liquidity charts, which he's thinking, I think we sweep a little bit lower here, and this is his thinking. He says, it could be wrong, that's fine, no problem at all, but it's quite interesting to see that, he thinks that, this is a brilliant, he's really good, this kid. He's always in the bot, this one, for this. So you can see we've topped out potentially on that pump for, for Independence Day, and then we kind of sweep the liquidity a little bit lower here. That's the liquidity in there. So I think that's probably likely the outcome, and it gives us another opportunity to buy a little bit more, doesn't it? All right, this is Paul Barron, big week ahead, quoting Bull Theory here, that the breaking US law enforcement have stopped blocking crypto clarity. Two major law enforcement developments happened in the last 24 hours, and I think it's to do with the sheriffs. What was it called yesterday? The National Organisation of Black Law Enforcement Executives, NOBLE, became the first majority law enforcement organisation to publicly endorse the Clarity Act. So that's pretty cool. There was before it was they were opposed to it, but they seem to be on side, and it sounds like quite a big deal that for your country. As the price was running up yesterday, again the simulation is real. Charles Steingraber. 4th of July we're at 17.76, $1.1776. Previously, it's just weird. Again, it's like the white hats are in control, and again, Danny Darko coded alchemists in control. Before it was 17 cents, and on the 4th of July 2020, and today we're at $1.17, which is kind of neither here nor there. But at the same time, I think it was XAG, which is silver and gold. Silver was at 17.76 and gold was at 1,000 gold. That was cheap gold then and silver, right? Again, this is pretty kind of quirky timing, isn't it? This is Crypto Bullwoo, RSI breaking warning 2017 versus 2026. Back in 2017, before things got real busy for XRP, you had a kind of quirky dip and a pump on the RSI, which led to a massive surge, and he thinks that we're kind of in that territory. Things could turn on very, very quickly, certainly up to that $10 mark in the future. I don't doubt it when regulations and everything sits into place, because all the pieces are there now, aren't they? This is what I'm thinking is, you've got, the charts are bottoming out, there's not much more room for them to shift. There's like little flushes here and there, but they mean nothing. They're within 10 percentile range of where you're at already, which is not a move. There'll be these back and forths, these pumps and dumps, the manipulations of the markets, and the kind of the trading by the market makers, and that's all fine and well. But that shit's coming to the end when regs go in, because they're not going to be allowed to do that with those assets. Kind of trade them on those volume, because what will happen is that the liquidity pools and the kind of pricing of these assets will restructure. That's my feels on things. once they start getting used, a lot of people need more of those tokens, which then creates a repricing structure. If you had a look at kind of Charu-san, his work lately, that's kind of spot on in my opinion. And again, this is XF Crypto, a South Korean lawmaker just disclosed holding 500,000 XRP in official asset filing. His son holds 3,000. Another Seoul councillor reported 409k XP. These are enormous holdings of XRP. That's like $500,000 thereabouts again, right? They are absolute whales. And they're having to disclose that. So it makes us wonder, right? Those guys are going in heavy. Again, Milky Boot Crypto, XRP is also having a breakout. A successful breakout might go take it to $4. Sorry, I can't speak today, can I? What's going on? We're not there yet. But that trend line, once it's broken, like we saw it for Estella, it kind of ripped up pretty aggressively after. And this is quite interesting now. Revolut to delist USDT for 50 million users by August 31st. Europe's largest fintech, Revolut, will remove Tether USDT, giving it 50 million users. It's 50 million users on August 31st to sell or withdraw balances before they convert to fiat. Well, this was predicted, wasn't it? This was predicted by Bearable Guy, that once regulations came in, this Tether monopoly would soon come to an end, and we're seeing it happen, aren't we? With I'm not saying Mica is a good thing at all. I'm not for Mica, but it sits right into the RLUSD's kind of sweet spot, doesn't it? And they're going to be very, very careful to decide who becomes the benefactors of the digital dollar. And I'm sure Tether is being used by the American administration at the minute to keep the treasuries bought and keep them propped up, to stop kind of too much exit liquidity leaving from different countries. That's kind of out of my zone of competence, but people like Jake Glaber and stuff talk a lot about this. This is Cooper Dog Dad, Acting Director of National Intelligence, told July 1st, declass of everything within the next 2 months. And this is referring to Gavin Newscomb in a circle targeted by FBI corruption, and he's posting an article which was quoted by Ross Vandermeer. This is all Ross Vandermeer, correct? 2020 January is the target month according to the elites. The elites want their plans done at least by April 2020. It includes digital economy, XRP standard, reset, declass, and removing corruption. Every infrastructure will be taken down away from the old guards to the new elites. You won't get much from the mainstream media news since it will shock the world. Everything will happen so fast people won't be able to grasp their mind together. Watch the Dow Jones, S&P, and Nasdaq. It will be sudden, out of nowhere. Now this is really interesting. I don't know. Again, the dates don't seem to kind of. So he talks about January as a target month, completed by April. I don't know about this 2020 business. We've talked before about 2019. If it was used in the Ethiopian calendar, then that would start around September the 11th, 2026. I'm kind of I'm out there with that a little bit. Like, okay, cool. I just think that a lot of things, this stuff got delayed. Given the administrations in America and the forceful use of the kind of captured SEC in America, same in the UK political sphere, until the deep state is removed, these plans can't go ahead. So I don't know when that is, but I'm always very interested by January and April. Those have always been very interesting months. We can see now D-Class and DAC-Q is way on the way now. America have got their kind of country under control, and they're rolling everything out. And remember, it all starts in America. It doesn't start in London at all. London is the epicenter because it contains the king, doesn't it? The bad king. And I'm not speaking out preference for the royals or for or against them, whatever. But you certainly got a king that's, it's who's on the chessboard and who's been in control of a lot of the pieces of the chess game, hasn't he? We can talk about that if we looked at the kind of the Marvin Gaye, Ross Vandermeer post showing the British royals right connected to this lot, the deep state, and connected to this lot. So when we talk about the king, there's also connections to this. In the Bearable Guy scene, you've got the monarchs who have controlled a lot of this wealth along with the Vatican and these scumbags here. And the power's been taken away from them, isn't it? This is a fight back here between the BRICS nations, including America, showing that America is positioning itself right close to the BRICS. But again, you've got to remove yourself of all this lot. And unfortunately, this is my country at the minute, which is very much prevalent given the situation in the UK right now. This post is really, really powerful. Anyway, let's have a look next. This is Judy Shelton on Gold Telegraph posted by DAI. And he puts, I think, Ripple should issue RLGLD, Ripple Gold. And she's kind of talking about, the next 250 years be shaped by how it chooses to rebuild trust in money. Now, Judy's been proposed many times as, the next treasurer, but she's a big, big advocate of the gold-backed currency. We'll just listen to the first few seconds of this.
I think it would be very interesting to launch stable coins that were backed. Let's say you had one exclusively backed by gold convertible treasuries. And I've said a solidus to invoke both, I think it's from the Byzantine period, the currency that was it was around the world. I mean, it was accepted across continents, called a solidus. It was an ancient currency. But I also see that could be, you have dollar stable coins. If you had a solid, because of the gold feature, backing to a stable coin of U.S. treasuries with the convertibility aspect, I call it solid U.S.
Interesting. Back in the day, she was quoted on an interview saying, people ask us, how does all the crypto fit into this? And she said, long before stablecoins became popular, she said, well, we could go back to the gold standard in a cryptocurrency-like fashion. And I'll never forget that. That was probably in 2019. And she was on record saying that. And I was like, how are we going to do that? Of course, they were creating the synthetic digital dollar on the blockchain, weren't they? And now, of course, we're not too far away from that. 6 years later, you can see, okay, stablecoins are becoming very dominant. And they're winding up the kind of the throughput of dollars minted on the XRPL, on Ethereum, and also, you've got Circle and Tether, who obviously massive dollar-denominated companies. Now, we've seen Circle stock collapse quite significantly last week as another stablecoin issuer came out called, I think it was called OpenUSD, which is quite ironic because XRP, before they were called Ripples, and that's why I use my handle on X or Twitter as Ripples in Wales. Before the term of the cryptocurrency you now know as called XRP, they were called Ripples, and before that it was called OpenCoin. It's interesting to hear a company come out and put called OpenUSD. It's like, okay, this is kind of weird. So Circle stock collapsed in referring to kind of this open conglomerate of stablecoin issuance connected to a lot of the big companies. And it's very, very interesting how they're going to try and go about another monopoly in stablecoins. And this is very interesting as well. This is Bank XRP posting a conversation between Franklin Templeton's Roger Baston and Ashish Birla, former Ripple executive and board member now, but he now runs Evernorth, and it's to do with how much would be tokenized potentially by 2030.
So in the city's tokenization 2030 report that came out in early June, they're projecting 5.5 trillion in tokenized securities on the blockchain. And I'm curious, from your perspective, Roger, is that overshooting where we're going to be in 20?
Come on.
Where do you think we'll be by 2030? In terms of adoption here.
Well, regulatory considerations aside, feels like that could be underestimating, to be honest with you. If you look at the size of the capital markets in general, that would be a relatively small amount of market share of the public markets in general. And I think the trends that we're seeing is a dramatic retooling of the underlying piping of all of these ecosystems, because quite frankly, it feels like a better operating system.
Radical change in the piping that underpins this system. He is the head of Franklin Templeton tokenization of their kind of crypto. City previews. So I don't know his connection to City, but okay. the key thing there posted, right, he thinks that we're underestimating, and they will always do that, 5 trillion is done in a blink of an eye. If they want to put stuff on chain, they'll push it, but they don't want to break things too quickly. They're going to kind of ramp up the volume bit by bit and stress test the system. They've already stress tested it really. It's all been sandboxed before. But okay, you can't tokenize shit on Bitcoin. You can't tokenize shit very efficiently on Ethereum. Okay, these are not chains that are going to be. I might be wrong with Ethereum. They're going to use the XRPL, seller. They're going to use Solana. And they're going to tokenize on all these chains, so probably XDC, Hedera. I don't know what who's going to become the winner takes all. I don't think there is. We're in a multi-chain world, but the problem is, the gift is, it's not a problem. The entirety of that pie is shared over all these blockchains. If you hold a little bit of each, then you've already won, right? Again, Bitcoin is now digital capital, as in air quote, gold 2.0. It isn't playing in this arena. So the 5 trillion is shared by this, potentially between the blockchains that I've mentioned. The idea of our our ledger, and we'll go on to that in a minute. A post by Bob Way, if it's up there, it's not what I wanted. Where was it now? No, let's find it. Come on, Bob Way. It's the one post that I really want to talk about because it backs onto this tokenization. And here it is. There we go. Okay, cool. I'm going to click on this and we're just going to go over something in my highlights. Now, I posted the other day. If you want to find anything, just go to my highlights. I pin all the gold that I write. If I do little write-ups and stuff, they're in my highlights. Saves you tons of scrolling. Just go and have a look in there. Now, this was a post by Anderson, Anders XRP. He is one of our community members. Spot on. I asked him to repost this. Okay, and what I've posted about it, okay, actually we'll just look at the post firstly. This was done back in the day, and Bob Way, who is the senior architect of the XRPL, one of the true mavericks and geniuses of our time. This guy is unreal, okay, and it was in reference to a post that Darren Moore, our late friend who's now passed on in the XRP community, one of my good friends, pretty devastated to hear he passed away. But he posts back in April 28th, 2019, I believe I can see the future. And Darren was so far ahead of his time. God bless him. I miss him. Every time I come online, I think about him. I messaged him a few weeks before he lost a lot of his crypto. I messaged him out and I sent him a donation. We talked back and forth and I was like, yeah, I don't know what even happened. No one let me know. But anyway, R.I.P. Darren, sending love to you wherever you are. He posted back in the day, I believe I can see the future. And he did this picture, with all these currencies, USD, GDP, CNY, Brazil, Euro, Czech franc, Mexican, I think it's and Japanese yen. And then all posting into this, which was the old world, into this, with XRP in the center of them. And Bob Way quoted it. This is so powerful. I like the diagram, but you have to imagine the circle with 180 fiat currencies plus gold, silver, and some crypto assets as well. Only then do you realize the magnitude of how many direct market combinations there are in the top diagram. Let's just read that again. I like that diagram, but you have to imagine the circle with 180 fiat currencies plus gold, silver, and some other crypto assets. Now, what was he referring to? This, right? And what did he mean by that? Well, what was the XRPL designed for? And this is the senior architect talking. Someone who's, who created the ledger. He's telling you that our ledger was designed for tokenization, because this is tokenization. Okay, we didn't call it back then. We was like, okay, can you issue the USD, GDP, CNY, and all these other tokens on there? And, in the middle, can they swap in and out of a central, pillar in that, digital asset? Can they swap interchangeably, cross borders, unilaterally, cross country, using an intermediary neutral settlement asset? And of course they can, and they still can. But you tokenize these assets first, so each country has got to bring its own stablecoin, hasn't it? And he's referring to 180. So when we're talking about, I think I'm not mistaken, if you've got like 180 currencies, I think the amount, don't quote me on this, but I'm going back to the data in my mind, There is 36 trillion of fiat currencies on the planet. Okay, so we're talking about in that previous video with Evan Orth and Franklin Templeton of the tokenization of various things in capital markets onto the blockchain, and they're talking about 5 trillion. Well, the fiat, future fiat on chain, okay, and it's obviously shared by multiple ledgers, but the XRPL was designed to really do the currencies. That's the idea of it. Other kind of chains will do different parts of it. Solana's doing some parts of MoneyGram, and Stellar and XLM are doing some parts of the DTCC, but they're not doing settlement, are they? They're doing tokenization. XRP is a very different beast. But the key vision of this is, like, let's draw right out into the future, 2030 plus, when all the countries are starting to really get in their game together of, minting their own stable coins and producing them on a blockchain. That's Bob Way's vision, but also he says gold and silver and some crypto assets as well. Okay, that lends into a much bigger vision than where we're at the minute. Okay, moving forward, we talked about this in my highlights again. America 250, the Declaration of Independence. Now, 2026 is a very special year because we talk about the Ripple Riddler and things. They wrote videos saying the Declaration of Independence, obviously connected to the 4th of July, but clearly it was a centenary mark of America 250 as well. That must have been written in their thinking. And I put here 4th of July 26. Is this the Ripple ushers in dollar dominance once again? XRP and RLUSD are set to ignite the digital asset engine globally and drive the next evolution of the internet value. XRP was put there to serve the dollar, not fight it. Okay, and that's why the purple and yellow sit together. The Riddler insiders knew long ahead of time that the battle for crypto supremacy would swing in XRP's favour in 2026. They knew Trump was going to change the financial system forever. XRP has trusted liquidity of this new financial system and the XRPL rails. That level playing field looms closer than ever before. Regulations are the catalyst. Is 2026 the year it all begins? Buckle up, I put. And this was a clip about the Ripple Riddler put there. You'll all remember this. Now in this video, there isn't any yellow. It's just like green and purple, which is Bitcoin and XRP, and it shows a level playing field in the background, which you hear me talk about. This is the level playing field, and it's 3, 2, 1, go, and you'll as we watch it. The Riddlers cleverly use liquidity in the background on this level playing field, which is Jackson Hole in Wyoming, where the Federal Reserve have their meetings, and it shows the balloon taking off. Okay, and this is the first stage that the balloon takes off, but there's multiple heights that it goes to, much, much, much higher. We're not even off the ground yet. This is a long journey, but there's going to be great heights that we soar to. And that was something I posted in my highlights, and this is 2026 where we're at. They're going to set the law and regulations. And talking about regulations, I kind of wanted to jump in and show you a video back in the day where the BG123 stuff. Now, this goes back to 2000, I think it was 2019. It was CKJ Crypto who found the riddle for the regulations that Bearable Guy was hinting to. And this video was pretty cool back in the day. I remember it. I remember him finding it. 2019, December the 18th, I think it was. If I go by, I've put that on the riddle, dropped December to 18th. So
okay, guys, so Big BG tweeted a picture of regulation and molasses bottle. If you're not familiar with Bearable Guy 123, this is his Reddit page right here, Art Ripple. He changed this right here, this and other factors. So once you Google that, it brings you to this right here, regulation molasses. And what they're saying is basically there's a lid on the price, which is holding it back. Regulation is slow as molasses. Also, semi all over this. Sully touching on, what Sam covers. He always has a lot of good ideas. But Sam chimed in from BG123, regulation is slow as molasses. Keeping a lid on the prices. That makes sense to me. There's price on the lid, regulation, molasses.
So good to watch that. I remember back in those days, they were vintage years in the XRP community. There were only a few of us kind of like having a sniff around. Sam I Am to the lifeboats was, doing a lot of digging back then. And CKJ, God bless him, he was like super on it as well. Like Darren Moore. I was just learning back in those days on that, but I was certainly, my nose was to the ground. And again, that's where the riddle came through, and that tweet that was shown was this is the kind of where was it? Let me just find the picture I was after. Yeah, these. So that was the image that dropped on BG's channel. But for the regulation jar molasses, it was this. Those two images were dropped, and that was the 17th of December 2018. Sorry, not 2019. My bad. Excuse me, which was 1 year before. So that was dropped, and then it had a link back to his Reddit page, which said this and other factors, which is a tiny URL link, which is rippled. We talked about that before, which is the Bearable Guy's kind of Reddit page, and then that linked you to the famous jar that we always talk about, and it takes you to an image where we know that the famous jar came from. Now, regulations are very, very important to do with all this, isn't it? We know that the lid is being kept on the price, okay? To hold the price down, a lid on the jar. That's the kind of metaphor, keep the lid on the jar, slow it down. And molasses is treacle, it's very slow. And so the metaphor in this was, regulations are going to be incredibly slow, and don't expect anything. Now, we kind of knew that, but we didn't think they would take this long. But we're in that province now, that region, where everything is about clarity, and clarity is regs. BG123 talked in the early days about the FIT Act, how things fit together. Now, the former name of this reincarnation of the clarity was the FIT Act. It's now been called the Clarity Act, okay? Something clear. And BG referred always to this regulation side of things. This is the key thing that you're waiting for. On a post I did, I'll just read this off quickly to you, is that revisited 2018 edition. Many of you knew about the BG 123 riddle regulation last, but very few of you might have been around for the drop. The class of 2018, remember this one. Since we're approaching the tipping point of the regulations, maybe we should revisit the origins. And I posted here, that the origins of the BG riddle was dropped on this Reddit page in December, blah, 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 whatever. The riddle was simple and effective when decoded. Regulations were going to be as slow as molasses, like treacle, and the lid of the jar, the lid of the jar had a price written on the meaning a lid was being kept on the price of XRP until something might open that very lid on the jar. Then we saw the jar again in the BG123 Christmas scene, placed upon precariously on the edge of the library. We'll talk about that in a minute, with a gavel beneath it. Now, these early smaller riddles formed part of the bigger riddle that was BG123 Christmas scene, dropped back in December of 2018. I think it was actually 2019. CKJ was the content creator who's still around to this day, covered the drops from Bearable Wine. I want to do never missing a beat. And the BG123 Christmas scene was the first and only main scene that featured the regulation jar molasses, and was dropped, I think, if I got that right, it was 2018, December 24th, 2018, 6 days after the regulation of molasses drop. BG then dropped the jar of the tipping molasses in August of 2019, which was the last time we heard anything with a regulation jar of molasses. Why is this significant now? Is that we're coming to the crescendo of the regulations in the USA, meaning we're close to the riddle being going live. Why is this important again? Well, the ambiguity of having no regular clarity is what has kept the price of XRP down by keeping a lid on the jar. As we move into a regulated landscape in the crypto world, we can see that the Ripple's plans within plans are about to roll out, and that lid will come off the jar in style, meaning the XRP price discovery, not financial advice. Yesterday we talked regarding the BG123 GIF, we'll cover that in a minute, which was posted out in August 2019, hinting that maybe towards the end of August regulations will be at a tipping point. However, the regulations of the jar of molasses was still on the bookshelf in the Christmas scene, which leads to me to believe that we might have to wait until Christmas for the very, very regulations which are keeping a lid on that jar. When law passes, that jar falls off the bookshelf, and you can bet your price will skyrocket for XRP. Again, not financial advice. And I've put here, this tipping point of the GIF. Now, we'll quickly look at this now before I move us on to the Bearable Guy. Actually, no, we'll look at it on Bearable Guy's page. So on August the 18th, this was dropped a kind of tipping jar of the GIF, which was referring to this jar here. Okay, so you can see that August is placed here and September on the kind of the calendar. I'll bring up a version of the calendar so you can see September's in the bottom corner and it's golden, okay, which is really interesting. September forms the beginning of the level playing field. Now, we've been over this every year. I've thought each year that we're going through it was going to be the year that regs passed. All I can say is that, up until now I've got it wrong. We don't know if and as when regs pass, things will really start driving home, because regulations are the thing that are holding you back. So the level playing field starts in September. Now, September's right in the bottom left-hand corner, right next to the gavel, which is law, which is hitting the bookshelf, which then knocks the jar off. Now, come August, when this jar is tipping with price on it, Bearable Guy was maybe referring, and this was probably supposed to occur maybe many Augusts ago, but the correct things, factors that were slowing it down, this and other things that, that were slowing regulation down, will come to a kind of an end. And that is the kind of the key thing to recognize right now, is that we're approaching the tipping point. Everything is aligning, isn't it? We've got price right at the bottom, perfect for them to scoop up everything that they need to do, all the market makers. We have a restructure in the mannequin. Do you remember this guy? We talked about this before, the sleeping mannequin in the first Bearable Guy scene here, that held by the strings of the arm, the powers that be, the sleeping mannequin, and the mannequin formed a very clever riddle to show all these massive institutions around the world: the SEC, Fed Russia, World Trade Organizations, G20, BRICS, World Bank, SWIFT, UN, IMF, and I think it's supposed to PTB, which is the SEC and PTB, the powers that be that are the hand. And all those organizations needed to be restructured in this kind of change that's going on the planet. So we saw the explanation of what that was there, okay, and we now in the Christmas scene see that the string man had cut himself loose. Now this is why things take so long, because you had a complete restructuring on planet Earth of all these organizations. Now you can see the string man's cut his own strings off here, so it means these are freed. And that picture of the man with a string man with a knife in his hand comes from the Bearable scene here. He's on the bottom, which tells you those organizations had been 589, had been resetted, okay, and you had to go through all of that really before we were able to move on. On top of that, you've got kind of this, remember this Tether news that's come out with Mica being delisted from Revolut, and obviously various other European Union connected entities. Tether is in the middle of this rug, this, the Persian rug, which we talk about with Iran. There's massive connections to Persia and, where is it? Here, we've got Iran up here, being pulled out of the deep state under control BRICS, and this is why clearly Trump is in Iran doing what he was doing, because they are captured entities of the deep state that are there to probably disrupt the peace in the Middle East. Let me have a sip of my drink here. So, we're in this scene, there's a lot going on. Tether's in the middle of that, Persian rug, which is, like got a massive red patch of, it's almost like, bleeding out of a rug. And we're seeing it being delisted because of the MiCA regulations. We've got the jar at the edge of the bookshelf with, at a tipping point, potentially in late August. And we've got a gavel next to September in the calendar. These are things that are kind of formulating in my mind now. But this is a Christmas scene. Okay, this is dropped at Christmas and it reflects Christmas. So let's take ourselves to Christmas in the future, at the end of this year, and we can see that, the stockings are kind of placed, as we've talked in many years now, are placed at very specific places. End of November, we have the XRP stocking. Now, last November, it rocketed from, again, 40-something pence in my country, or let's say 50 cents in the Americas, all the way up to $4 pretty much, wasn't it? I got a video with it at all-time highs. And you've got the kind of the cozying up of the purple stocking to the old stocking, which is the kind of connection that I've always talked about here, that the XRP is here to protect the dollar, hence why they're spooning these two kind of, Christmas stockings. That was made obvious in the very first Christmas scene in the castle scene, showing that the bear sat between XRP and USD, and the king sat between XRP and Bitcoin. Okay? the bear, XRP was here to help the US dollar, and the Bitcoin was here to dethrone the US dollar. But straight in the middle of them, and there's a line between the bear and the king, sits the highest flag of the castle, the middle line. And this is the standoff, isn't it? They're fighting. This is the kind of line drawn between the king and the bear, the old guard and the new guard. And there are many different ideas of what the bear is. And I was just looking at one of Not Financial Advice Crypto's kind of... I've never watched any of his content really, but I saw one of his posts on X. But I think he's a flipping genius, clearly. He talked about these various deities that the bear could have been, to how would I put it, represent a kind of a deity that sat between knowledge and wisdom. It's one of these sacred deities that occurs in every country. Has a scary kind of face on it. They're quite prevalent. And, whatever the bear represents, it's fighting the good fight, against the king. So the point being, XRP is here to protect the dollar. The Bitcoin was there to dethrone it, and the king is on the side of the Bitcoin. You can see that, and the bear is on the side of the US dollar. Okay, but in the middle it sits XRP, which splits the two, and the knight now is protecting the castle in this image. Now you'll recognise, before we move on to something here, that the phoenix was sitting on the Bitcoin's tower in this castle scene. But there was Anders, the same guy who reposted the Bob Way post earlier on, he commented on something rather incredible that I want to share with you, and it is a picture. Oh, please tell me I've brought it up here. Oh, bollocks. Have I? Yeah, I have. So excuse my language. Right, so I've done my own copy of this really, and what we've done is we've overlaid, if I kind of bring this down for a minute now. Let's bring up this scene here. Let me just minimize this by half. Okay, and I'm going to show you that, and I'm going to show you this. Okay, and we'll put them in two halves of the same screen. Okay, as we can see on both images, you've got a knight. Okay, they both are identical, aren't they? And so what Anders brilliantly did was overlaid those two knights one on top of the other just to see what happened. Because it is ironic that they're both identical. Okay, but was there something here in this that was trying to tell us something? And he then dropped the transparency on the castle scene to give us something else. Now I'll just bring this back to my window here, and I'll bring up that which I want to show you. This is what he found. So the two knights are in a line, and I've got rid of the background from the castle scene, and you just got the castle overlaid. This overlaid the Christmas scene. So the two are sitting over the top of one another now, and you've got transparencies on the two so we can see through it. I thought it was very, very fascinating that when you put the knights over one another, what happens is you have the two phoenixes in the fire, okay? But this time the purple stocking sits above the phoenix, okay, in the window. But not only that, you've got the White House that breaks the scepter of the king, just like the gavel on the opposite side, okay? And you've also got the spire of, going straight through the end of November. Now, it could be nothing, but it's certainly interesting to kind of look at these things, because there's something quite interesting that both the phoenixes overlap. But in the first window, I explained that in this castle scene, the phoenix was under the Bitcoin flag, but now the phoenix is under the XRP flag, if that makes sense. The flag being the stocking in this. The purple colours are interchangeable. You see, you've got them here. I did this for you earlier on. They're the same things, okay? If you aren't aware of that, green Bitcoin is the green stocking. The purple is the XRP, and the yellow is USD, okay? And so when you see those, you can't unsee them, that you've now got the purple next to the phoenix there, and that this king's scepter gets broken by the White House. Now that for me was wow, okay, that's something. There's something there, okay, even if something. And I tagged BG123 and it's saying, if Anders has got this right, this is pretty damn cool. So I wanted to bring that to attention. Could be something, could be nothing. It doesn't really matter. The finished article of the calendar is also interesting in that it's got gold on September, okay, and that the fight ends up in towards November, where you've got these kind of crosses like pirates. X marks the spot. We are currently in July as I record this, so it'll be interesting to see how things progress. Again, Just take the time and enjoy your summers. Don't fantasize about these astronomical prices. Keep things in reality check and think long, and accumulate when you can. That's as simple as it is. Last things to mention are the tether in the middle of all these coins. Okay, it's particularly Ethereum, EOS, Tron. It's got Stellar facing the wrong way here. And the fact that the tether ecosystem was pinned to all of this kind of chicanery, this kind of printing out of money, and basically they used it as a factory to push all these tokens out. And if that's coming to an end of a monopoly, then it begs the question, where is liquidity going to flow? Because people are still misunderstanding the connection of RLUSD, thinking it pulls away from XRP. It doesn't. All we need to do is go back to the Bob Way symbol. We talked about that image. The XRPL was designed as a DEX. It's the first DEX in blockchain that we know of. Okay, and that means a DEX is designed to tokenize all those assets on it. Okay, and the throughput of all of that energy from the DEX adds to the liquidity needs for XRP. Okay, that extra volume down the pipes, it's all going to need some XRP to lubricate those rails. It's all benefit 1++++ for XRP. RLUSD isn't against XRP. It's part of the tokenization process on the ledger. There's going to be many more currencies that spawn on the XRPL, that are minted, rather, spawn, like a gamer. I'm not even a gamer. Anyway, this is the paradigm shift, power transition image we talk about the Ross van der Beem of the game. It points to June and July. One shot left, confirmed go. Keep your eyes on that. That's very interesting, because also you've got Japan here. Okay, Mount Fuji volcano. Okay, well, that's talking of Japan. This is peace in the Middle East. It's got peace and mass wealth and peace in the Middle East. And you've got Aries, which is this is the confusing part of this. Aries is the first month of the year in the old Hebrew calendars and stuff. And of course, this is all astrological, the astrological wheel, and it's got, I think it's Veda, is it in the Hebrew? The first month of the year is April, but this sits above. Again, they've used 2019. Again, I'm not sure if this is, the Ethiopian calendar or not. We don't know. But the confirmed go in these astrological signs, you've got Pisces, which is March. You've got Aries, and then Taurus, and then the other star signs beneath it, May, June, July. And you've got the red stopping light there, and it's starting, in the middle of June, which is solstice, through to the end of July, confirmed go. I guess we'll see. I don't know. Again, these timelines could be wildly off these days, because they were dropped so many years ago. They expected things to go at a different rate. Things were slowed down and whatnot. Anyway, I hope that's good. I hope you enjoy this content. I hope you wouldn't mind giving it a like, give it a share. Drop a comment, tell me how you're all doing in the world, what you've been up to. Do you celebrate the 4th of July? What did you do? We don't celebrate it. My brother lives out in the States. He probably celebrated it. He's just finished on the Air Force One project for Trump. I keep that under wraps a bit, but I don't mind telling you guys, my close inner circle. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed the video. I will drop this hopefully today for you, get it out the doors. Have patience with the markets. They'll come to you. Think long. Dollar cost average, and get your entries in. And I look forward to seeing you next video. Take care, be blessed, and bye for now.